What's up, weebs and casual alike? We are Baka&Co, and we are here to provide you with a deep dive into all the random anime shows and movies, new and old, interesting and bad, that you should know about. On today's show, we will have myself, Frankfurtter, Magicallyaverage, Drew Tendo64, and returning guest, SamtheMangaMan. Today we will be talking about the 2021/2022 film Inu-Oh. I say 2021/2022 because it came out in Japan in September 2021, and it didn't come out until 2022 in the States. But before we hop into the film, how are we all doing today? Good? No? Maybe?
I'm eating tortilla chips, so hang on.
I fucking
I thought he was gonna say something, so I was
God.
holding off.
Why am I not surprised?
I love the fact that the other two just like stayed quiet, and I'm like, perfect. It's my time to shine.
You were tapping your mic.
Tortilla chip
You're
in
getting
hand.
ready. You were getting ready. You tapped your mic. I was like, okay, go
I know
for it.
you guys knew. You guys followed the assignment. You guys knew what was going on.
He legit just
I
went,
appreciate
my
it, yeah.
shining moment, and just fucking took it.
This is my scene. All
Sam, how you doing? Welcome back to the show.
I'm good. I'm glad to be back. Thanks, guys, for having me again.
Absolutely. Thank you for recommending this movie. You were the one that recommended it, and we all watched it together. And we will go into what we thought about it in a little bit. But yeah, we're happy to have you back. We're always happy to have a fourth opinion because God knows that us three stooges can just talk in circles about the same thing over and over again. So nice to have somebody else to kind of keep us in line. Don't
One of
you
us
even
does
deny
that.
it. Don't you even fucking deny it.
One of us does that.
I hate you so much. Anyways, today we are reviewing Inu-Oh. It was directed by Masaki Yuasa, and written by Akiko Nogi. Yuasa is a prolific director in the anime industry in which he is behind classics such as Tatami Galaxy, Space Dandy, The Night is Short, Walk On Girl, Devilman Crybaby, and Keep Your Hands Off Isekin. The movie was animated by Science Saru, which is pretty much, they animated everything I've just mentioned except for Tatami Galaxy. So these two kind of directors and studios, they really work hand in hand on a lot of projects. But the movie was based off the novel Tales of the Heike Inu-Oh and consisted of two main characters, Tomona and the titular Inu-Oh. The overall plot, which this is really summarizing it like really simplistically, is about Inu-Oh, which is a boy/man, he grows up, who loves to dance but was born with really weird, awkward proportions, and Tomona, who is a blind musician. The two of them join forces and try to break the mold of what was the 14th century Japanese music, like, industry. So that's really putting it simply. Like if we're really gonna summarize it, who wants to kick us off here? Because there is a lot to talk about in this movie.
Oh, pick me.
Okay, Drew, go for it.
So I'm gonna redefine who I am on the podcast and just be the guy who loves backgrounds. And I want to shout out that art style because when we were first suggested this movie, I looked at it, I thought, this is going to be interesting. I'm very curious, but I also kind of held back my expectations because the animation originally threw me off. 1 second. Sorry.
He's coughing into the different
Yeah,
dimension.
yeah, I'm coughing to the third dimension.
Into the paper dimension.
Oh god.
And when I think it was Frank told me that it was the same director from Night is Short. And I connected the dots and I fell in love with it again because my first impression was, oh, this is weird. But then you get excited, obviously, watching trailers. And then, obviously, us diving in, I think that was one of the more enjoyable films I've watched in a very long time. And especially watching it with other people, like everyone else was excited. We were all having a great time, although like no one's shouting and screaming in the same room, but it was still like a great movie, and I'm gonna leave it at that before I get into more. But
Yeah, Sam, you were the one that suggested it. I mean, what drew you to this movie in the first place? Because I know you saw this. I'm pretty sure you saw this in theaters when it came out last year.
Yeah, I did see this in theater last year, like early 2022. First going in, I knew, like, besides the Night Short, Walk On Girl, I also watched Ride Your Wave in theater too, and That was also another work from the director as well. Good movie. The animation is a little weird, but I think that was the point. Even though it is an animated movie, you usually animation is like the top, like number one of why you would go into the movie. But it's also like next to the story and then the concept, and then what what threw me even more of it was the music of it. I knew I was going, like, when I read the description, I already saw rock concert. I was like, ah, sure, why not? I'll watch a rock concert movie. I mean, it's an anime movie. I want to check it out. And it kind of, the music really blew me away within for this movie. So much different, like, I'm gonna say maybe in the 90s or the 70s of rock concerts and bands that I can depict from it, such as like Queen or with Prince. Like there's a lot of like there's a lot of like modern culture onto this 14th century. Of course,
Yeah.
it's not supposed to be accurate. It's not like rock and roll was not created back in the 1400s, but all of it was lost, like lost music. You don't know what's like come to be and what kind of music they're going to show in. So why not just, what if they already did invented rock and roll and somehow they're able to perform, use their special effects and perform their own way, which is very clever. Instead of just the whole magical throw off of, oh yeah, they suddenly have pyrotechnician, they are somehow have light work and everything like that. No, they able to do it. It's just that in their own modern technology, even though I'm pretty sure in the 14th century nobody lived past 30. Yet, I mean,
Yeah, it's the life expectancy back in the 14th century. Definitely it isn't what it was, or it isn't what it is today, or wasn't what it is today. I don't know. Tyler, don't shake your head at me. I know. Tyler, give me a little love on this movie. What were your highs and lows?
Oh, that was my low point.
Fuck you, too. God damn it.
Seeing your brain just spew out your
Hey,
ears.
those two brain cells are fucking working their asses off. Okay.
Yeah, I think they both just shot each other in the face.
Probably.
This movie was wonderful. I will say that at first I thought the pacing was a little strange, and it was kind of hard to get a sense for what the tale was going to be. But it, like, as it unraveled, it built itself out more and more and more, and you can kind of see the bigger picture. And it ended up being a really fantastic story overall. But I love how they took a very complex and very difficult storyline and made it digestible to fans, because in essence what this movie is telling is how back in the 14th century in Japan, and then obviously before that point and even after that point, a lot of storytelling was guided and dictated by the shogun at the time, who was controlling the area. So like the stories had to be derived from whatever the shogun had just stated, okay, this is what you can tell. And most of the time they were performed by monks too. And there were traveling monks who would go around the region and gather new tales and then bring them back to perform in front of the shogun. And then that's how you kind of created this whole troupe of performers. And then
the bards
yeah,
has, yeah, Japan's
yeah,
bards.
exactly.
Yeah.
But now, and then with Inu-Oh, though, the story was basically that they were creating new Heike tales, which is I am gonna butcher the history around this, but it's the battle between the Heike and the uh different faction, and the Heike lost. I think that's correct. I don't know.
I'll double check.
Regardless, it basically they were creating new tales from the story and kind of rivaling the existing troupe who had been given the rights to perform stories from the shogun, and kind of created this whole new genre, if you will, of stories to tell. And then the shogun's like, no, fuck that, that's not going to happen. They're like, well, no, fuck you, rock and roll, bitch. So but like it's hard to translate that in today's day and age, like even in Japan, not to mention outside, who people look at this and like, what the fuck is a Heike? And like no one's gonna know that. So how do you do that? Well, let's do traditional versus progressive. Show traditional music, traditional storytelling, and then make it theatrical to really like emphasize the fact that this was a strong movement in that day and age. Make these guys rock and roll. Like you were saying, Sam, there was a lot of references to like rock and roll bands like Queen, Kiss, Prince. We had a little bit of oh, I'm gonna forget his name. Oh, passed away. Was in the movie Labyrinth. Why can't I
Oh, David
remember
Bowie.
his? Thank you, David Bowie too. Like, there's a lot of really cool artists that they were referencing who were all progressive for that period of time when they emerged too, for in one way, shape, or form. So I loved how they were able to incorporate that into the storytelling and how they depicted the like the tales of the high key too. So I thought it was wonderful. Like Drew was saying, the animation was kind of strange, but it definitely fit the overall feeling and vibe of the movie. And the sound design, like top to bottom, was some of the best I've seen in a movie in a long time.
Yeah.
Not just the concert pieces, but whenever they were showing Tomina, who was the blind musician, there were scenes where that focused exclusively on sound and his ability to hear, very like very distinct areas from of his surroundings, and that came through like crystal clear when we were all watching it with our headphones. And I know we were talking shortly after the movie, and I think Frank, you made the comment of like there was one part where you just heard like pings and bongs and different noises coming through, like once in one ear, one in the other ear, and then like it was
Yeah,
perfectly
the
synced.
the main example that I pulled up was when Inu-Oh and shoot, what's his name? The other guy, Tomina. When they first meet, Inu-Oh is kind of running all around while Tomina is on a bridge, and Inu-Oh is just literally running from his left side, like the left side of the bridge, and all you hear is sound out of your left earphone. So to me, yeah, I 100% agree. Like the sound design in this movie was absolutely incredible. I don't know if you have much more to say, but the faction that kind of, or the police kind of ward that cracks down on them is the Ashikaga. So I guess to just kind of throw my 2 cents real quick into it, this is like of just general feelings. This movie really had me grinning from ear to ear the entire way through. Like, it started out a little slow and wonky. Like, it kind of took a second for it to get its bearings, because they kind of showed you some scenes that make sense later on in the movie. It's like, aha, like, I get it now. So it starts you with confusing images and shots of just like what the fuck is going on, to okay, this all makes sense now. Like, it comes full circle, and it's very well paced in that regard of just like, okay, you start out weird, and then I know you had a little bit of pacing issues, Tyler. I kind of looked past it and thought it was fine. There were a few faults. I can't remember off the top of my head what they were. I know we discussed it. I should have written it down. Oh, I know what my faults were. My one fault is, we were talking about, like, how, what if rock and roll existed in the 14th century Japan? The thing that didn't exist in 14th century Japan was electric guitars. Physically, they just didn't exist. And what really kind of,
What?
if you're going to be making a movie about 14th century music, whether it be about rock music or not, like, I feel like using electric guitars in the music is a little just cheating in a way, but also just like it doesn't fit for me. Like, I had no problem with the music in regards to what it sounded like. I thought it sounded beautiful, but would it fit the like actual scene? Not really. Like, I was like fine with the believing, like, they had their own pyrotechnics, they had their own lighting, they had their own.
Wait, hang on. Whoa, because I was about to make that comment. I was about to make that comment. Like, that's believable, because okay, it built like, so basically when the band is formed, when Tomina creates this new group to travel around and tell these tales, they're basically like street performers on a bridge, and they get a small crowd, and then people start gathering, right? And then they're like the talk of the town, like, did you hear this new troupe is performing new tales of the Heike. Like, who knew there were new stories out there? And you're like, whoa, okay, cool. And then like next time they perform on the same bridge, just like bouncers like blocking people, and people are like freaking out, like yeah, yeah. And then the next one's like basically like Woodstock, and they're like there's a giant whale with like flames that they're using behind a tarp. That's believable. That's believable.
I feel like they
Are
could
you
pull that off.
shitting my
They could
dick?
pull. Okay, they could
The
pull
light
that
work-
off
light work
more.
and shadow, you kind of can. I mean,
Yeah,
just the
but not to that
distance.
scale. Not to that
You know
scale.
what? It's more believable than an electric guitar in the 14th century.
Yeah,
okay.
Yes. But it is hard. I can't remember the name of the instrument. It is hard to make that instrument sound heavy and rock without some sort of distortion to it. Okay. Got to
You
give
sh-
them some breaks
You
here.
can watch your those Snow White notes, and like they can make it sound fucking awesome.
It's
It's
an
just
anime too, my dude. There's anime
I know
magic,
that's
my
why
bro.
I'm saying like, but they use
Well, what I'm
just those
saying is that
instruments.
that's not how it actually sounds like in real life.
And
That's not how it sounds like in real life. I bet.
This isn't
even
what you
in those
sound like
Snow
in
White
real life
notes.
either.
Whatever. Anyway, like just but I thought they did it really well because it kept building and building and building. Like originally it was just like street performers playing rock, and then it was like no, it's basically like people moshing to giant concert to huge like festival with lights and a water dragon, and Inu-Oh was like shooting around on a fucking like rope and just gliding on the water like a princess. Like it's so over the top, so overly exaggerated, but I feel like that played perfectly into how they wanted to tell the story, because they are trying to really emphasize the fact that this was about as grandiose as we're depicting it back in the day. Like
Yeah.
that's how impactful and that's how like progressive this whole new movement, this whole iteration of stories that were being told by Inu-Oh and his troupe were to this entire like music movement, like the entirety of the music as you put in earlier, industry apparently of the 14th century Japan. Like it, I think that played into it really well. Could they have used a little less electric guitar? Maybe. I would have gone for double bass drum pedals myself, but I digress.
Yeah, but I mean, there were a lot of highs to this movie. I think one of my kind of favorite parts about like them starting off was the fact that they had Tomona on top of the bridge, kind of doing like he's the people gatherer. He's the one that gains the interest. He's so unique. He's so different. He's like, hey, come listen to our show. This is going to be a great show. This is going to be fun. This is unlike anything you've ever seen before. Now introducing Inu-Oh. And then Inu-Oh's just down below the bridge like a little goblin, because he literally is like a little goblin at first, proportionally. And then they perform their shows just underneath a bridge, just kind of like a street performer would. Like it's really, I really enjoyed that aspect of it, but I also really enjoyed actually the stories that they told, because they're, as we've talked about, they're telling new stories of Heike, in which that nobody's ever heard before, and they're like, I didn't know that there were new stories. Well, that's because both Inu-Oh and Tomona can see or sense the spirits that are around them from all the fallen soldiers, and those spirits are telling them stories. So I love that they have this beginning of they're getting these stories from these fallen soldiers that nobody can see, so they're telling true stories. However, government, the people in charge are like, no, these are false, these don't exist, this is whatever. But I love that as all things go, they rise in popularity, they become like Beatles-esque, in which they're too big, for life, that they can't really go anywhere without getting mugged. And that's when the spirits are just like, okay, bye. We don't know, like, you're telling our stories, but not in a genuine way, or not in like to me, I understood it as like, you're not telling our stories in a genuine way that we want you to be, and you're too big for life, and you're too into yourselves, that we're just going to leave you alone, and we don't have any more stories to tell you. And I really like that kind of subtle storytelling behind that as well. I thought that was done really well. I don't know if anybody else really kind of picked up on that or not.
No, I agree, because they're, like, spoiler alert, one of their last songs, they kind of get blocked by the spirits for the insight and the information that they're trying to get to bring through, because a lot of their stories are based on like the true fact and what actually happened. So they're kind of spreading the truth, and that's why the shogunate's afraid of them. So they're going to tell everyone what really happened at this terrible incident. So they have to stall for time near the end of one of their songs, saying what comes next, or the truth is out there. We have to find it if we keep singing. And then they kind of break down to say we need to be more honest, we need to be more genuine, we need to go back to what this music is about, rather than being these two awesome dudes. And it snaps back, and they put on a humongous spectacle, and they get to finish their story. But having most of the movie go through with no risk, no villain, was interesting,
I
because
mean, wasn't the father kind of villain in a way?
yeah, but not
There was a
until the
couple of
end, really,
villains.
right?
I mean,
Until he does his
he was
terrible
using that
stuff.
Majora's Mask. I mean,
Yeah, but we didn't see the effects of it until pretty much the last act, right? So
I mean, he had always been like
he was shitty.
He's
I mean, it
been
was just
like
the mask was
antag-
talking to him, kind of thing, and
Yeah,
But also, like when Inu-Oh kind of stumbles upon the temple where they are playing the traditional music, he's dancing along as if, like in a new type of dance movement akin to maybe like a Michael Jackson, Prince, whatever. And this guy thinks that he's so distracting and he's taking away from the beauty of what is tradition, and he kicks him out, and it's like, okay, this is our first incident of just like antagonist of the guy, the father figure, who we find out later father figure, and Inu-Oh. So I think that he's been present throughout the story.
No.
It's just near the end he's more prominent, I feel.
yeah, yeah. There was no real, like, he wasn't out to get them constantly, and we didn't really see that until towards the end when shit goes down, and Inu-Oh and Tomiya have to put on a show to kind of not just clear their names, but let the truth speak for itself. So I always explain movies as kind of a roller coaster where there are highs and lows, but I think with this one, it was building up to that almost the entire movie. We constantly saw Inu-Oh changing. We saw their music getting louder, bigger, a humongous spectacle. They go from performing under a bridge using weights and tricks and levies and fulcrums to generate these humongous shows, to a full-blown tower being lit in the middle of the night with fireworks and all these shadow plays and all this ridiculousness. So it was like the journey to get there, I thought was very appealing to me, and the payoff was just phenomenal. Like I have no concerns about the music. Yes, electric guitars didn't exist in the 14th century, but hey, we're watching a goddamn anime.
It was like
Goddamn anime or
also
an
too
anime?
a potato kid with an arm that's like 50 feet long.
Yeah, that's
And then,
believable, but
like,
electric
yeah.
guitars aren't.
Yeah.
It's a folk tale. Like it's like
Oh my god, I don't even want to point out the hypocrisy, but it's fine. Sam, what are your additional thoughts?
I mean, like, I kind of figured that dad was like the villain, like a little bit even more from the near the beginning, because at least you get the hint of it. Like, what the hell, like, was he talking to the mask for? And then like, offer me your son, and then boom, like, all right, so you have the general asshole father villain, and every time you see the father throughout the movie, you see him like criticizing the band, his own band, and then his own son that's doing dancing, being like J.K. Simmons and Whiplash and stuff, and giving all the critiques and criticals and stuff like that. I mean, like, and then you see Inu-Oh just literally just seeing them dancing, and then he picked himself, like, I like what they're doing. Let me see if I can move my own legs, and it was the start of his curse breaking. Like, cause like when he saw them dancing and he starts to dance himself, even though he was like left footed, or like, I forgot what was wrong with his feet, but then he was able to
They're
break
kind of
that part
stumpy.
of. Oh, he grew
Yeah.
he grew legs. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
he grew the legs, and it started out like a sad, really like sad thing, because he started out as the king of the dogs, and he
Which
was
is-
like literally in the trash and everything. I was like, oh
Yeah.
man, it's
Well, and that's what Inu-Oh translates to, I believe. from Japanese is Inu is dog, and I think
Yep.
O is like king. So I think it's
Yep,
like
you're right.
dog king. Or
Which
king of the
makes even
dog.
more the whole street performance like makes more sense. I mean,
Yep.
like street dog and everything like that.
Yeah. There's a
Um,
lot of layers to the movie that I really enjoyed.
there's
And
also the costumes and the outfits too. Like it literally like back then with rock and roll and everything, like no one had like regular the same look or different like that. A lot of them were like long hair, a dress, or like just leather pants or spandex pants. All the stuff. That's literally back in the day rock and roll, and they literally put that in like into this modern portion of rock and roll music and the evolution of it onto, even if it is the 14th century, it's really put it onto into this movie. Because when we think about rock and roll, we think about the rebellion, rebellion, little law breaking, truth spreading, the whole works of everything that's anti-establishment kind of thing. And I really enjoy that. Like, yeah, I mean, you see this kingdom, you see both the shogun restricting so much of his people, and his technically, I think their main goal was to try to look for the weapons or something like that, the three uh some three artifacts and stuff like that, and trying to unite the entire country. Yet like you guys mentioned before, like he was just restricting so much information, he didn't tell anything to the people. He was just doing it for the wrong reason. And of course, like I guess like what didn't really happen in our history compared to their history, like they anti-establishment did win in the end in Inu-Oh, unfortunately. But at least like in our modern history, we made that change. We've like evolved rock and roll into what it is right now today,
yeah.
and it's still everlasting growing. Unfortunately, in the 14th century, um, like languages, they die, and so now it's a dead language, dead instrument, dead music. It never came to be into writing, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like thankfully Jimmy Carter didn't fucking behead like any rock and roll artist for like stop going against the system. But poor Inu-Oh didn't really have a defense. He was just like, I'm gonna play my music. They're like, okay, say goodbye to your brain. So yeah. I loved how, to like all the points that you had mentioned, and the like the subtleties with a lot of the different aspects of the music and how it was portrayed too throughout the movie. And even like the conversations that took place behind the scenes too. Like there was one scene that stood out to me where the monks were talking. Like I think it was after the first street performance they put on, and he was like, have you seen Tomina's hair? It's so long. And they're like, yeah, he should shave his head like tradition. And then they're like, did you see he's wearing like makeup? He looks like a street whore.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, it's probably exactly what a lot of rock and roll bands were told back in the day, like trying to be different, trying to break against the norm and the mold of what music was like back in, in the late 60s, and then transitioning into the 70s rock and metal era, and how that started a whole movement, and then the creation of just a plethora of genres from that point on, branching off. Like it all started at one point, and this was what the movie was depicting, was that like this breaking away of these set standard stories that were dictated by the government, that were controlled by the shogun. Someone had to break the mold, and it was Tomina, in a very theatrical, extravagant, glamorous manner. And I loved how they were able to do it in a very tasteful way that again was easy to understand, but also able to still tell the traditional story of the Tales of the Heike Inu-Oh as well. Like that aspect is important
Oh, Drew dropped.
and helpful, because it no bro, Frank, you messed up my stream of thought.
Sorry.
We just keep quiet. We let the 2D man fly away like a paper airplane.
Slipped through the cracks.
Anyway, hello, welcome back, Drew. But yeah, just to wrap up, like I thought that was really well done by them. I think it's hard to tell something, one, of tradition in a modern way that people will understand, but especially from a different culture that has evolved so immensely. I mean, 14th century is a very long time ago. America was not born yet. We will not have been born for another like 400 years or so. Okay, for those of you living in the United States, like that is a very, very long time. So for them to be able to like showcase and highlight like exactly like how storytelling was and how music sort of evolved in a way that people like us dumb Americans can go, oh yeah, that makes sense. Huh, that's cool. I can follow along. Like that's really challenging, and they did a really good job.
So I want to throw one really fun fact out there. Um,
It better
It's
be
r-
fun.
it,
I better sit in my seat.
So
I
help
better
us
go.
God, Frank.
I
I
better go.
hate
Oh
you
my
so
good golly
much.
gosh, this was such an
You
enjoyable
know what?
fact.
I don't even
Go.
want to say it now. I don't even want to say it now. It's
Do
really
it.
interesting, but fuck your couch.
Do it, man.
So the nominations for best animated picture for the Oscars this year have not come out. They'll probably come out next week, so we're a little early on that. However, the Golden Globes happened this past year already, and this was nominated for best animated feature, which it did lose to Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, which I'm
I think
thankful
that was
that
fine.
which
think that
I'm
makes
thankful that it
sense.
lost to that and not Puss in Boots.
Okay,
However,
no.
However,
No.
there's only been one other Japanese animated film that's been nominated for a Golden Globe. Can you take a
Mirai.
guess? God damn it! You know,
I know this. I love.
Which one is it?
Mirai by Mamoru Hosoda,
Hosoda. Yeah, I love Hosoda.
guy who did Belle this past year, as well as Boy and the Beast, Wolf Children, Summer Wars, etc., etc.
Digimon.
Well, as Sam said, yes,
Digimon?
Mirai.
Digimon
Yes,
movie.
he did the original Digimon movie.
Digimon are the champions.
Sure.
Nice.
But yeah, no, this is the second Japanese animated film to ever be nominated for Best Animated Feature in the Golden Globes. So there's your fun fact from me, just looking at this. But I mean, yeah, there's so much we can really break down with this film, whether it be how the characters dress, act, etc., from the start that they have to the rising fame that they have at the end, which Inu-Oh becomes like an actual human. He has an actual like he breaks the curse that his dad puts upon him, and he has like regular proportions as a human and a beautiful face. To the music, to the background, to the audio design, there's so much to pick apart about this movie. I think just what to y'all were your highlight? Like if you had to recommend this movie to somebody and you only had one part to kind of talk about to really sell them on this, what would you sell them on? Because for me, it would definitely be the audio design. I think the way that they use the audio in different ways, whether it be music and like going from little band as a startup to just this ginormous grand production to Inu-Oh running from one side and you only hearing it out of that side. I think that to me is worth just watching this movie, let alone just listening to this movie, because the sound design in this movie is so phenomenal. But I mean, what would you guys tell somebody to sell this movie?
Oh, it's so hard. Just like in terms of finding like a one scene to pinpoint or one aspect of the movie. I'm gonna get kind of real. I don't want to say nitpicky, but like just kind of on a whole different level explain why you should watch this movie. And it is you should watch this movie, but only subbed, not dubbed. And this was a discussion we had before watching it because I feel like you don't get the full experience in a dubbed version because of the way that the Japanese music is played and told in terms of storytelling. It is very much akin to like the Japanese language, and I feel like it would be hard to come out in an English vocabulary or English tone or anything like it, just basically any English speaking person, it would be hard to translate over. I think it needed to be done in subbed, and I think we all watched it and agreed afterwards like, yeah, this is probably better off
I didn't hear
watch
any audio
subbed.
from the dub though, so I wasn't even sure if even the music was also in dubbed. If on the dub version side, is it?
Yeah, they
Usually
might
with
have
these
just
type of
played.
films, they do dub them. I know with Belle, they had a whole dub for
Yes,
that
they did.
movie. I would assume that they would dub this as well because then you have people complaining who do watch dubs that would just be like, "Why would I go watch this in dub when it's all subtitled?"
Yeah,
So I feel like for this they would have had a proper dub.
and most of the time I am not a like you should only watch everything subbed or dubbed or whatever. Like it's always just pick whatever is most convenient for you and easiest for you to watch. But
The amount of
this
dubs that I
Um,
watch, holy
I
shit!
mean, I'm pretty
yeah,
sure we
that
would
too.
have enjoyed Don Glee's better subbed though, especially with
Yeah,
the music too. Yeah.
there's definitely I mean definitely some things I prefer one way or the other just based on either who's the director is or the like overall feel and vibes of the show. But I feel like for Inu-Oh specifically, it is an experience that you have to watch subtitled at least once. You know, watch it and then, you know, go to dubbed afterwards or however you feel like. But you just I don't think you're going to get the full message and the full aesthetic of the movie unless it's subtitled where you're listening to it in Japanese, music and all, how the storytelling is, the cadence of everything. Just you know how the characters talk to one another, especially back in the 14th century. Like there's a lot of different aspects that I think would be lost in translation in the dubbed. So that's my only one thing with this in terms of like getting someone to watch it is just watch it subbed.
Drew,
It is a whole cool experience.
you look like a sleepy boy, Drew.
Oh no, our paper man is falling asleep.
No, it's every once in a while because I have glasses on. It doesn't track my eyes.
And
it's like-
likely story.
Yeah, it's fair.
Don't
I
make
put
me
people
turn
to
on my
sleep.
actual camera.
I put people to sleep.
Drew,
No, but
what would you sell this movie to if you had to pick one thing specifically?
I want to piggyback off of one of Frank's favorite scenes, and that's when Tomiya meets Inu-Oh for the first time when he's completely blind, and the way they not only audio design that but visually as well. Like there's
Yeah, I
faint
didn't even talk about that.
colors.
Holy shit! Yeah, you're right.
The spiral, the stars,
Yeah, and it was all
Amazing.
just a very soothing, very zen kind of situation. It made my heart feel very warm because they were explaining it in a way that I could understand visually that possibly this is how he's picking up on sounds, kind of in a basic way to break it down, like sonar, right? So he's understanding where things are coming from, and just that whole interaction where Inu-Oh is still in his semi-deformed state. He's threatening him, trying to scare him, and he's, "Don't you have eyes?" "No, I don't."
Can't you see me? No, I'm blind.
Yeah, and it was just like,
aren't you
it
scared of
got
seeing
me.
my face? Like what face? I didn't see. I can't see.
And it was just so good. It was like reminiscent of Toph in Avatar. There
Oh,
it is.
God, yeah.
And that's what it sounds like when you guys say it. But it was such a great scene, and this movie goes from just being kid in a terrible situation, gets blinded because he sees something he shouldn't have, this, that, the other thing, becomes a monk. And it evolves into this beautiful rock opera. It's just fantastic. I loved it.
I don't know if it's
I want Drew to tell me
necessarily
bedtime stories in the future.
just like you
All
told
right.
him a bedtime story.
Mouse, if you give a mouse a cookie, yada yada yada, you have an infestation. Good night, you little shit.
I'll do it. I'll put it up on a Patreon.
God
Yeah.
damn it, Sam!
Drew tells bedtime
Did you talk to us about what you would sell this on? No, you haven't. What would you
No,
sell
but
somebody
I
on?
would help like pick a little bit because what Drew mentioned, like the visuals as well. Because you also have like Tomo's like he's like you see his like perspective of blind, but he's able to shape everything literally from that movie. You just see from his perspective, like everything from sonar and sounds of him like moving with his stick, even with his I guess father figure or the brother figure monk that he practiced the band with. He was also blind. They were literally traveling together for years, and literally you just see like it's all black, but then you see this is design, the lines and everything, design movements from it, uh, all the way to the bridge scene. And I don't think we see from his perspective anymore. Of it's we there's people who have eyes in it. We've our main character have met the other main character now, so we could just see everything instead of being the vision. But we'll still keep the sound and vision, the sound and everything like that. What I would sell is that when we watched this movie, it was like more. I would technically say it was more than 60% music.
Yeah,
Like yeah, like
that's a
30
fair.
minutes,
That's a
like the first
fair.
30 minutes, 40 minutes, it was just talking, visuals, and sounds, and then like literally the rest of the movie was like music and
Their
song.
first performance lasted a solid 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, and this movie was what, an hour and a half, hour 40, something like that.
Yes, hour and a half kind of
Yeah.
thing. I would probably sell like you're gonna be entertained when you watch this movie with the music, and like if you love rock and roll, and if you even if you like if you like Queen, if you like Kiss, if you like Bowie, and if you know about the movements, and you've known about the history, like even if it's the U.S. history of how rock and roll change and evolve in the world, like I guess this would be in a different perspective how it could how this phenomenon and evolution, if this was put into Japan's 14th century, this is where this is what they would do with it. This is what would happen with it. Even if electric guitars weren't made until like 400 to 500 years afterwards, you could still enjoy the performance and the light show with it. I guess how they maneuver all the special effects onto this movie, even if a lot of it, even there's some of them you can nitpick some of that don't make sense, but I think overall of how creative they made it was very clever, and I think people would enjoy. Uh, Even though it is a mix of past and modern takes of music instruments and special effects, people who don't know about the work, who aren't even sure about to hear like the electric guitar instruments or anything, I think they're probably it's believable that yeah, this could. We don't know if this ever actually happened back then in the 14th century, but people can be creative, people can be very talented, and people can be like very clever. If this actually did happen back then, I mean, we would have seen that in museum or something like that. But
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, even the reasoning why we wouldn't have seen it in a museum is like at the very end of the movie, the literal new emperor of the area just put a gag order on all of their music, and it was like, all right, this is the only type of music that exists. Any other type of music that is performed, y'all are being arrested. So like, even if this did exist, we would never know about it because nobody recorded it. It was all banned. So yeah, like it is interesting to think like, was this actually something that may have actually happened in the past?
Yeah. I'm gonna slightly change my response before, and say like overall, because what everyone is saying, I've picked up little pieces on. I'm like, oh yeah, I like that too, and I've come up with a description to explain it all, which is the subtleties of the movie are superb. Um, like every scene, there's like little pieces that you can pick up on it, and this is one of those movies too where I bet you go back and you can really find more and more each time as well. Like at the beginning, I don't know why I just remember this, but at the beginning when Tomina is blinded and he's starting his travels to Kyoto, which is the capital at the time, um, as he's journeying to meet the monk who he ends up traveling with, he's playing the instrument and he's like, oh, I'm playing a song about this crossing of the lake to the island. And Tomina is able to read the sign. The monk's like, oh my gosh, you can read. Like that's a huge piece too. Like that
Yeah.
plays into his ability to like be able to navigate around and also
it gave me
understand.
that Daredevil vibe where Stick
Yeah.
was teaching him, is like,
Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
you were able to see for 10 years. Lucky you. I was blind since birth and everything like that.
Yeah. But like I like that because it also kind of gave you the idea in the sense that like he understands the language, like he understands how to read and potentially write too. So that could play into his ability to tell stories and like create these stories. And to what you were saying, Frank, with and what you were getting onto, Sam, as well, with how these tales were effectively banned once Inu-Oh was beheaded. Tomona beheaded, excuse me. And Inu-Oh
I thought
was
it was more stabbed, right? It was like
no, he
yeah,
was sliced and head rolled off onto
okay.
ground.
Yeah,
Um
like what I remember was that he died
he
under
got
that
bludgeoned
same
in the back.
bridge,
Yeah, he
and
got
that
bludgeoned in the back of the head while
and
he
the
was
soul
playing,
never
and then
rested. And then
yeah,
from the beginning of the movie, you see like literally time moving. That was actually a very good take too. Like
yeah.
literally, oh no, this
Again, a lot
happened
of
way before, and then like different scenes. I think that was very cool work.
yeah, a lot of subtleties in that aspect too you can pick up on. But like there's a lot of layers to this where you just sort of are able to kind of put pieces together and to connect those dots, and it's just through those little subtle moments too, like the bridge scene where he's blind and he's seeing the shapes and everything, and that's you're kind of getting a sense for how he's able to like go through his life, like walking around and being able to find things, traverse things. But then it also you pick up on his ability to hear really well and like pick up sounds. So it all these little pieces play into the characters and the storytelling, and I thought that was great. And I think subtleties are superb. Just keep an eye out for those because movie is built definitely around those.
Yeah, I did look it up, and I did confirm he was beheaded because he kept performing and speaking out against the Ashikaga. So, yeah, his head did roll. So just the final thoughts, wrap it up. Overall, I think for myself, this is something that it's difficult to recommend, in my opinion. I think like you have to know the person's likes and interests. If somebody is really into music or history in general, I think this is an easy recommendation. Be like, hey, here's an interesting take on the 14th century Japan and their music and how, what if rock and roll existed back then. I think that would be an easy recommend. But to somebody who, like my wife, who isn't really necessarily into history or music, this would be a really hard sell. Overall, I loved this movie. I was grinning ear to ear overall, like from start to end. And the aha moments of like when you realize the first few scenes from the movie really connected, like the ending kind of showed why these scenes were shown. Like, oh, it's like, oh, these were, this is why this was shown. This is how it connects. That aha moment to me was really kind of, it was earned. It was earned in my opinion. I really enjoyed it. I think that this movie is a solid like 8.5 out of 10 for me. It's not perfect. It's not terrible by any means. It's not even bad by any means. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. So I would recommend this to any music lover or history buff because it was just a blast overall. Those are my final thoughts. That's my rating. Somebody take it away?
Yo, what up? It's your boy.
Is it?
I want to say very much the same thing, except I loved every part of this movie. I didn't have a problem with electric guitars. I think it was very well done. The animation was crisp. The story had me hooked. Um, the background being we're searching for these artifacts, but that's not the real story. The real story is this, and it kind of having all these converging kind of paths that met in a fantastic finale of sound, animation, the keyframes, the backgrounds. It was all just so bombastic that I think watching it on a small screen didn't do it justice. I think Sam probably had the best experience by getting to see it in the theater and just be like, "Oh my god!" Like the sheer size of it.
Movie I watched in the theaters.
And that's the thing. So if my recommendation is yes, definitely watch it, but if you're going to watch it, do yourself a favor, watch it on a larger screen. Don't watch it on your computer.
Yeah, fair enough. Sam?
Yeah, easily like 9 out of 10. I did enjoy like this entire. I enjoyed it way more. It blew away my expectations from the very beginning before watching into movie theaters, and it it's definitely a movie that you would definitely want to rewatch again. It definitely had that Jinji Ito moments with like the creep factor onto it right from the very beginning
The
into
Majora's Mask.
throughout. I mean, even the father was psycho, man. The
That too.
father was psycho, and then but yeah, like it had its own weird creep factor, and then the weird animation art. I think that's Sign Saru's like a best way to do it in their animation work. It's that style, and I would say like yeah, the story came around full circle, and of course like the music over like was literally the biggest factor throughout this entire movie, and I loved every minute of it. I even like still listen to it on Spotify, like the albums and everything. And it's really like good music, like motivating music. And I'm not gonna lie to you, they have the entire like I think they have like 9 minutes that the whale song was like the full 8 minutes, 9 minutes. And then like I'm thinking like you know what, even some rock and roll songs had this length of a
It's
song
like a fucking
anyways.
Tool album.
It works though. So if you love rock and roll, if you like the haiku history, or um, I would also even say very LGBTQ positive as well.
Yep.
Very, very, very good. I love the message. Love the movie too.
Yeah, I would have to give it. I'm probably the more stingy one when it comes to rating. I would give it like an 8. Pretty really really strong 8, on the verge of an 8.5. If I was going very specific, I'd give it an 8.2. But pacing wise, I thought it was a little bit awkward at the beginning, just because as was noted by Sam, like the first probably 25 to 30 minutes are a lot of the storytelling, the talking, the introduction of characters, and then it's like bam, the remaining portion of the movie is just music, 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 which I loved. But it was a lot harder to get a grasp for where the story was going until they started like really kind of pushing it along, and you're like, oh, okay, I should be focusing on these people. Like there's one aspect of at the beginning where when Toman is blinded, you're like, okay, the story is going to be about how he kind of finds his way and is able to you know, get revenge and allow his family to rest in peace. And then it's like the movie ends and you're like, what the fuck happened to that sword thing that blinded a bunch of people? Like and sliced his dad in half? Where'd that thing go? There's like a lot of little pieces that are just, they kind of deviate away from, but you don't really get that until the very end. But I think other than that, other than the pacing piece, every other bit is fantastic. I won't, repeat what everyone else has said, because everyone else has said it wonderfully. I just thought this movie was incredibly enjoyable to watch. Definitely would love to see it on a big screen, because I think would be a much more enjoyable experience, like seeing a rock concert, like the Pink Floyd laser show sort of vibe, where you just kind of sit back, relax, and just enjoy all of the sounds.
The surround sound speakers
Yeah.
from movie theaters really would put it up a notch.
I'd bring my little light little
Glow
crackers things, the glow sticks to
You
wave
weeb.
around.
You
Yeah.
weeb. God damn
But
it.
yeah, no, go give it a watch.
Wow. it had to happen once. The fucking soundboard by
Yeah.
Sam. Oh god. Well, thank you all for joining us this week, and thank you for joining us today. I shouldn't say this week, today. If you have any suggestions on what we should watch next, please send them our way by giving us a tweet at Baka&Co Podcast. We also want to thank Akano from SoundCloud for our intro song. But until next time, Spark Triumph. We'll see you then.